Welcome back, everyone, to another Empathy Week speaker series. I'm here with Tayo Adesina, founder and CEO of Trash Gang, does incredible work. I'm going to quickly introduce a little bit about Trash Gang, just things that are on the website. Essentially, Trash Gang exists to break social isolation barriers by being a safe space and creative outlet for young adults to express themselves, gain new skills, and craft their own meaningful future. Tayo's set this up having experienced the loss of his best friend and is going to talk to us today about his spark, who he is, why he does what he does, and also maybe have some great tips for you watching and listening about how you can also enable your spark to come out. Welcome, mate. Thank you so much for your time.
Pleasure.
And how would you add to that introduction of yourself? What is it that your spark is? Why do you do what you do?
I mean, you nailed it for an introduction. I've never had anyone describe what I do better than I possibly can, so thank you for that. I guess that in terms of my spark and why I do what I do, and you partly mentioned it, it is about relationships and community. Unfortunately, like you mentioned, right, I lost my best friend of 10 years to suicide. But actually, what that meant is I saw firsthand how powerful social isolation can be. And really importantly for me, it meant actually I'm really focused and being able to give young people opportunity so they're never in those same situations. And that's been a real game changer for me.
Social isolation is just what what does that phrase mean? Because I think some people will hear that and not necessarily know what that could essentially mean. Like, is it just loneliness? Is it being excluded from certain things? How would you describe social isolation, and why is it such a prevalent issue that we need to tackle?
Mhm. No, I love that. I think it can be summed up in a couple of ways, and it will have a different meaning for each young person and each individual. Partly social isolation for me is the isolation from other human beings and having contact. And that contact can mean physical, that can mean literally being in a room with somebody else. But social isolation can also be the exclusion, whether unfortunately through discrimination or just a form of exclusion where actually you don't feel like you have a safe space of belonging when it comes to being around other human beings. And one of the biggest factors around social isolation for me is the feeling of closeness or proximity due to social media and digital tools, but actually how sometimes that is a barrier to real kind of inclusion and being connected with other human beings. So actually, I think the prevalence of social isolation is the fact that we've got a generation of young people who are so tech savvy, super, super smart, able to engage, build great relationships online, but actually it masks the reality of the real human connection we actually need. And I think that goes a lot to your statement around empathy. And empathy week is actually to have real empathy with others. Sometimes it does take that bit of connection where you not just hear their opinion, but you also get to empathize physically and emotionally. And sometimes that comes with that proximity of being close with someone else.
Absolutely amazing. And if you don't mind me asking, what was your best friend called?
Yeah, my boy Dave, my best mate Dave. Yeah, my best mate Dave.
When you lost Dave,
Mm,
what was the sort of transition from loss, grief to setting up Trash Gang? What was
And
that period like?
you know what, reflecting on it, it just kind of highlights how resilient human beings are. I'd never really experienced loss before, until I'd lost him. And to be best friends with someone, I mean, we sat in every assembly together. We were best friends for over 10 years. So all of our secondary school, even since primary school, we're in the same school together. So to go through that much of your life, build so much of your kind of character, your mannerisms around a solid friendship, and I always share that he's the guy that taught me how to play the drums. He's the guy that taught me how to ski. Also the guy who taught me how to ride a motorbike illegally at 15. Like we did, we did everything together. Um, but to go through that loss at a period where we were isolated, right? I was at university, he was back home. And there was a natural proximity. And that for me is another form of isolation. It's just you're just away from the people that love you or that you love also. Um, and getting that phone call when I was in the library, from my mum to say, "Hey, have you heard your best mate's in the hospital?" And I was like, "No, why on earth is he in hospital? What has he done? Has he hurt himself?" And of course, I left the library, made my way straight back to Kent to go to the hospital, and then physically seeing him in that space, physically seeing him in a hospital bed, tied up to tubes, like it really reminds you how fickle human life can be. And it really reminded me how much I love him and how much, that relationship really meant to me. And to go from that period, and I culturally as a Nigerian man, as someone brought up, in a Nigerian household, I've never really opened up to my parents, I guess, emotionally about what I'd been through. And it's not to say that they weren't willing to hear it. I guess I just didn't think I needed to. And I just remember breaking down, crying in front of my dad. And, he was just so comforting, so loving in a way that I don't think I've ever really seen before, but he understood the pain I was going through the loss of my best friend. Um, but ultimately, 6 months, a year, everyone says time is a healer, and they're not wrong. Time really does heal the biggest, deepest wounds. Um, and I reflect, and I had to do a eulogy at his funeral, and that was big. That was big. To be around, 100 plus of us all turned up, bunch of friends all turned up at this funeral, and I had to read about why we all loved this boy so much, who we weren't going to get to spend time with again. So sorry to make it so morbid, but it's such a reminder, sitting back and reflecting on how important friendships are, how important community is, how important actually loving on the people that you have around you makes such a big difference. And to honestly, to answer your second half of that question, how did that then transition onto what Trash Gang is and why I even set up Trash Gang as an organization? It was really that realization that young people are going through their individual battles. And as close as I was to my best friend, as much as we thought we knew everything about each other, there was still a part of his life that he didn't share with me. And for me, that was such a trigger that I don't want other people to go through that same process where they don't have an outlet, they don't have a safe space, they don't have maybe a community where they can be open and real about what they're going through. And that's what put me on this mission to create a creative space where I can get young people into a room, focused on the creativity, but actually giving them a space to express themselves. And that's what Trash Gang does.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing. I mean,
Um,
relationships are everything, right? I think
100%.
if you think the word well-being's used and mental health a lot, and actually I always bring it back down to relationships. When are you at your
Mm,
best? If everyone watching this thinks that when am I at my happiest? When am I at my best? It's usually when your relationships are all solid. You're
yeah.
not having an argument with, or a tiff with a friend, or you got a better relationship with your parents. And as you said, something beautiful has come out of your loss. And yeah, I mean, I've seen your work. It's incredible. Like, and but in some ways, if you don't mind me saying, simple as well, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Like the concept is creating spaces, using creativity, using things that we enjoy as humans. Where does the name Trash Gang come from as well?
I love when that question gets asked because it really highlights how much you grow and evolve as a person because where I was then is not the same person I was now. Um, the first half of the word, the first half of the name Trash Gang, the trash actually came from an ex-girlfriend who cussed me out, called me trash. She said I was a terrible partner to her. She probably wasn't wrong in some ways. I'm a very happily married man now, very not trash anymore. And even as she'd said that back then, I think it stuck with me that even if someone does label you, even if somebody does put you in a box, that doesn't have to be who you are. And for me, I refuse to accept that as a label that I would call myself. I refuse to accept trash as something that would be negative. So I took that and I took it and I spun it and I said it will be used for something positive. And for me, gang was always about having a collective, a collection of people that we can bring together. So Trash Gang was a very natural fit.
Amazing. Love that little story. It's fun, yeah, it's funny how things evolve and adapt, isn't it?
Yeah.
And what do you produce when you're in this creative
Mm,
space and these young people come and they engage and they're
mm,
what is it that you're doing? What is it that you're producing?
love that. Yeah, so I mean, for our young people, they are essentially telling their story through streetwear clothing. So what we do is we get them to respond to a creative live brief where they're ultimately expressing whatever it is that they've been through in life that is of most importance to them. And then we give them the tools, so laptops, iPads, digital tablets, and we teach them how to elicit their emotion and what they've been through and then turn it into a design. And then we actually create that design. So we go away and we actually create that piece of design that the young people have come up with and we turn it into real streetwear that they then get to own as well.
Incredible. And you can buy it, right? You can go to
Absolutely, yes. So we absolutely do encourage people to buy it because every design it tells a story that's impacted and helped change a young person's life.
amazing. What's the big vision? Like your spark is obviously clearly reducing social isolation,
Yeah.
helping young people be creative and channel that into amazing avenues. What is the next kind of progression of Trash Gang? Where is this going?
Great question. So we have a vision of creating what we call purpose-built retail hubs. Ultimately, we want physical spaces where we no longer have community spaces, community halls where young people can turn up and have a place to be. This on such a decline in the UK. We want to bring that back, but we want to do it for what we call a purpose-built retail space. So it is a hub, a physical space where young people can come in off the streets whenever time they want. Directly after school if they are in school, and if not, they're not in school, come in, get involved in a creative workshop, design with us. And then on the other side of the wall, they can also see all of the streetwear clothing that they've actually designed being sold in the stores for real. We want to give them those opportunities. They can come back, work in our stores, and actually get the opportunity to elevate and grow.
Incredible. What would you say to a young mind watching that is like, I've got an idea, I
Mhm.
want to do it. I don't know if it's going to work. I'm passionate about it. My friends might laugh at it. What's your advice to them?
Start. Always just start. I think we often forget how hard it is to predict the future. We can't. We can always look back and see what we've done, but it's very, very hard to predict the future. But the one thing you can be sure of is that once you start, you'll build momentum. So I always encourage all of our young people that regardless of who's watching, regardless of who's near to you, you owe it to yourself. Genuinely love on yourself and put your best foot forward in everything you do. And doing that means you just start.
Amazing. And I would say like the second hardest thing after starting is also when you get that first
Mm.
hurdle or big moment of doubt. I'm sure you've had many obstacles. What
Many.
what would you say is like the biggest or some of the biggest obstacles you've had with Trash Gang
Mm.
making it work over the years? And yeah, what have you learned from that process that you can pass on?
In all honesty, I think it's one word, and that word is humility. And I say that to say that once you are humble enough to accept that you don't know all the answers, you will go and seek knowledge from other people who do. No business out there exists, no success story exists without the support and help in hand of other people. One of my biggest supporters and helping hands is my wife. She's absolutely amazing. And for me, that's such a big bonus to have someone that I can share my burdens with, get advice from, be steered in the right direction. And that goes wider in business. We have an advisory board. You then have a team of people who believe in the vision that you are putting out into the world and they want to rally around you. And I think that would be one of my main pieces of advice for the young people who want to start something they're not too sure. And that's ultimately to keep sharing your vision in every room that you enter because you never know who will also gravitate towards what you love. And that opens doors for you when you do that.
Amazing. That Taya, we're coming to sort of the end
Mm,
of our time, but just one thing. Obviously, this is Empathy Week, and it is about empathy and
mm,
understanding other people, being able to connect. And where do you see the role of empathy and social intelligence in your work and in life as well?
mm. Ultimately, I think empathy is the baseline of what humanity is and should be. And I think ultimately, when you have empathy, you build relationships. I remember a piece of advice I was given when I was once a consultant, once a management consultant. Um, and it was simply stop looking for things to agree with people on when you form a new relationship, but just try to empathize with them and understand their journey. And I think once you open up the ability to listen and hear, you genuinely bring empathy into everything you do. And I think that is the foundation of humanity. And I think people who lack empathy are the ones that ultimately don't go very far in life and we don't get along with.
Amazing. Yeah, I always talk about empathy as also, in some ways, it's a little bit selfish. Like, if you were
Mm,
able to connect and build this skill and understand, like, you're going to do better off the back of that, right? You're going to gravitate towards people, they're going to gravitate towards you, you're going to share
yeah.
ideas, and then someone might just say in the future, hey, do you want to do this bit of work for me, or do you want to
Yeah.
join this project? I think that sometimes is a really great thing to think about as well. That it's not just about other people and
Mm,
helping them; it's also about helping yourself. Tyler, thank you so much for doing this.
pleasure.
We'll put a link to Trash Gang so people can check it
Amazing.
out, potentially get
Thank you.
involved. And yeah, what is there anything? One last bit of advice that you
Mm.
have, life advice that you want to give to the younger people watching?
Yeah, I'd re-emphasize share your story in every room that you're in. I think it's really important that you are willing to love on yourself enough to share what you care about because other people will gravitate towards it.
Amazing. And I love how much you've talked about love which is a word that is sometimes just, you know, all people
Mm,
like shrivel up at and think, but 100%, I'm with you all the way. Thank you so much for your time, mate.
thank you.
We'll hopefully see you at another event, and hopefully those who are watching, please watch some of the other amazing speakers that we've got across the week. They're just some absolute gems, and hopefully what this is doing is allowing you to think about what your spark is, and as Tayo said, just go for it. Thanks very much, everyone. See you soon.